Welcome to Roots and Branches of Lehigh, the podcast where we get to know the faces, stories, and lives that make up our community. I'm Ryan Harding, and I started this podcast as a way for us all to connect with the people we live alongside. Growing up in a small town, I learned that connections go beyond blood. They're built through shared experiences, friendships, and the moments we celebrate together. Each week, we'll sit down with someone new from Lehigh to share their unique story, their passions, and what they love most about living here. So whether you've been here for years or just arrived, join us as we deepen our roots and reach out to our branches one story at a time. Welcome, Paige. We have Paige Albrecht here today, my former neighbor, actually.
Former neighbor.
Yeah, so we get to reunite again. And also my helper with attorney things, too, because you still work there. So, which, you know.
I can neither confirm nor deny you have privilege.
Yes, yeah, because you, I like it. So, tell us a little bit about yourself. So, did you grow up here in Lehigh? Where are you from originally?
No, I wish. I would love to claim to be a hometown girl.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how long you have to live here before you can.
I think you qualify now. I think you're at that point.
It's been 22 years.
Yeah,
so.
I think that qualifies you.
I'm from all over. I
Okay.
was born a military brat in Hawaii.
Okay.
My dad was in the Army. He was an Army Ranger. But he was doing it, putting himself through school and all
Yeah.
that. So after they left the service, they came back here to Provo and he got his master's
Okay.
at BYU.
Okay.
Went to work for IBM, which anybody who's worked there, they'll tell you stands for I've been moved.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could move up faster if you went where the jobs were. So
Sure.
we lived in, South Carolina, which is where he was born and raised, North Carolina, Maryland, just outside of D.C., and then I went to high school in Montana.
Okay.
Then BYU for school, took a gap 3 years.
Sure. Sure.
And lived
Like
in
it.
Connecticut for a while as a nanny. And
Connecticut. Okay.
yeah, so all over. But for that reason, it was great because I know people all over and I've experienced a lot of different environments, but I really wanted my kids to have a hometown.
Sure.
So when we were looking for a place to settle after college and whatever, that's what we had our eye out for.
For some stability, I guess, in that
Yeah,
regard. I mean,
yeah.
obviously moving around a lot would be hard to, because your high school years were in Montana then, I guess? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. A little Helena, Montana.
Helena, okay.
But my mom's Canadian. She wanted to live a little closer to, she grew up just across the border. And she had this tiny little town. It had 300 people in it when she was growing up.
Yeah.
And they had these great traditions and this little general store and their little parades on the 24th.
Yeah.
And I just
like
craved that. Yeah,
Sure.
I really wanted to give my kids that experience. And Montana, same deal. Montana's is not. It's not Pioneer Day in Helena. They do Vigilante Day. Vigilante Day parade.
Nice.
But yeah,
Nice.
those hometown, small town traditions
Yes.
where people have been doing them for generations, and
Yep.
you feel really connected and grounded to a place. And I wanted that for my kids. So here we are.
I grew up in Bismarck, North Dakota, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So same deal.
Yep. That's kind of.
So also cold.
Yes, also cold. Yes, that's exactly it. That's why when people complain about winters here in Lehigh, I'm like, I mean, it can be cold, but not. You don't understand bitter cold. You know, with that windshield.
Yeah,
and
it
that,
goes right to your bones.
It's exactly it.
I tell you what, early morning seminary.
Yes.
6:35
Yes.
in the dark of Helena, Montana.
Yes. That's.
You either have to have really strong faith or really strong parents.
Yes.
Either one.
I can relate because, again, yes, I remember those days very well. So getting out of the shower.
Oh,
I
yeah.
had hair back then, and it freezing because it was wet. You know, you're trying to run off to school
yeah.
and stuff like that. But yeah, different days.
Patting the dashboard of your car. You can do it.
Yes, I know. Yeah. My dad was nice, and he tried to make room in the garage for me to park my car, which was nice because otherwise, outside it was cold.
I grew up reading like Little House on the Prairie books, and they would talk about the rope from the barn to the house so they could get firewood, and I thought, psh.
Yeah.
And then I moved to Montana.
Yeah. No, and then you start to see.
No lie.
Yeah, you don't see the ground for many months.
Yes.
So again, whereas here you're a little bit nicer, but.
Yeah.
Okay, obviously raised your family here in Lehigh,
Yep,
right?
Yeah,
so-
my boys, let's see, Alex my second son was, a year or so.
Sure.
And I had 3 boys, and so they don't really remember our
anything
living,
outside of your
college students or anything like that.
Sure.
And so they want badly to raise their families here.
Sure.
And it's changed a lot, but the things that we love about it is,
No, which it's a great place. Yeah. So then tell me, so you mentioned you went to BYU and stuff like that. What did you study? What did you study?
I studied English at BYU.
Okay.
qualified to do anything and nothing.
I wasn't going to say anything.
I know, humanities. I thought for a long time that maybe I would teach.
Okay.
For like a lot of people, the kids came along. I graduated with one on my lap and one on my tummy, and I knew if I didn't then that I might not be able to. So pushed hard to the end, got my bachelor's, and then 20 years later, I went back. Last spring, I got my master's in public service.
Okay, so you've been back.
So another really high salary.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about that, though. You've obviously gone into public service. So you're on the city council.
Yep.
Okay, and you've been there for a little while now, I think.
I've been there for a little while. I did planning commission before city council. I did that for 3 years. And back in the day, we had a board of adjustments for hearing land use appeals.
Sure.
We've moved to a hearing examiner now, like most cities have, but did board of adjustments for a year. So I've been in public service for about 10 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good amount of time. And what sparked that? Like, why?
I'd love to say like some noble cause or whatever.
Yeah.
I was ticked off.
Okay.
I think like a lot of people,
okay.
There were some things that were bugging me.
Yeah.
I guess it's a podcast, so I can tell the story, but...
You can tell the story. This is the long-form content stuff.
When we were down in college,
yeah.
My kid's dad loved to play softball with his buddies.
Okay.
And they had a softball team, the Great Bambinos, and just really loved it. And when we moved here to Lehigh, he didn't have his own team. Okay. And he was signed up as a sub, and they'd call him to come play sometimes, but he wasn't guaranteed a game every week.
Sure.
And he missed it. So I thought, I'll be the fantastic wife, and I bought him his own team.
Oh, wow.
For Christmas one year.
Okay.
English major, I wrote this really long poem about playing ball or whatever.
Yeah.
And for a couple of years, he had his own softball team in the Lehigh Men's Softball League and loaded it up with his buddies.
Yeah.
We'd all spend those evenings down at the park with our kids. It was just a really great experience. We loved it.
Yeah.
10 teams in the league. And one year I went to sign him up for a softball team, and they said, we're not doing that anymore. I said, why aren't you doing that anymore? And they said, we don't have the space. We don't have the park space. I said, what's wrong with vets on Main? It's really too small, and they're hitting balls into the street, and it's a liability. And a lot of reasons that on this side of it make a ton of sense, and on that side of it just made me really upset.
Sure.
I thought, surely we can overcome these problems.
Sure, yeah.
10 teams, you're talking about 150 guys and whatever their families are.
Yeah.
So I did a little research, and I went into city council. I looked up the bios of the city council members and made a note of which ones mentioned parks and baseball.
Gotcha. You,
well, I was
you
ready,
say this. And,
ready.
Yeah.
I had researched low fly balls and what it would cost to put up nets.
Yeah.
And I marched my little red wagon into city council and stood up at the podium. And I don't know what I expected to happen, but nothing did.
Okay.
They felt bad about it and wished they could help. And Mayor Wilson said, we're going to bring it back. And I said, when? And he said, whenever we can. And I left and just felt really defeated. I thought, it's not like I'm not willing to put in the work. I'll help you make it happen, all things like that. But there was a lot I didn't understand about budgeting and space availability and scheduling and things like that.
Sure.
But as part of that experience, I realized that I wasn't just mad. I had really enjoyed it. I stayed through the whole meeting. And I went to the next meeting. And then I started going to the planning commission meetings. And for the better part of 8 years, I went to both meetings.
Wow.
Every week.
Before you had any kind of...
Before I had any kind of...
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah.
When I was on planning commission, I still went to the city council meetings. The whole process was fascinating to me. The patience, the persistence, the investment that the people who are serving have in the community and the things that they go through to make things happen. The whole thing, I just found it really satisfying. And I had never intended to run for office. I was there for the entertainment value and because somebody else was putting the kids to bed.
Yeah. Sure.
It was great. And I would sit in the back corner, and for a long time, you could tell that they were like nervous. What are you doing here? Are you going to sell us down the river or whatever? And I really wasn't. I was just observing the process.
Yeah.
Learning and figuring out how all those pieces fit together and work. And so when Mark Johnson, our current mayor, decided he was going to step away from council, he asked me to run for his seat. And what I've learned since is that with a lot of women in politics, it takes that tap on the shoulder before they even consider that's something they might be interested in doing.
Sure.
I mulled it over, and we talked about it as a family and decided, yeah, we would. I haven't ever had to run against someone. I was running for an empty seat.
Okay.
And then the second time I was running for my seat.
Okay.
And the third time. So
Sure.
it was never a confrontational. The whole confrontational aspect of campaigning is really hard for me. I don't like that because...
Most people don't like that.
No, I have a lot of respect and admiration usually for everybody in the race. And it's hard for me to sit and say, oh, yeah, I'd be better than them this way, this way.
Yeah, you don't... Yeah.
Yeah, that's very hard for me because anybody who's willing to throw their hat in the ring, all the respect
Props
in
to
the
you.
world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just because it is a huge time commitment,
Yeah.
right? You're doing a lot of different things. And
Yeah.
I like that you really enjoy that part of it. Do you know what I mean? As far, I guess, just being involved in it, and I think that's a really good. That shows how much you enjoy it, or how much of a good fit it is for you.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because what my family always teases me that I enjoy business magazines or different things. They're like, oh man, I hate that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I hate reading that, but I enjoy those things, and so
Yeah.
that's how you get good at something. Is actually,
Yeah.
if you want to have any chance of getting good at something, you have to spend the time on
Yeah.
it. And if you don't like it, you'll
Yeah.
never get good at it. So
Well, and in politics, if you don't like it, you're not going to last.
Sure.
Because, like, my kids will come home and they'll say, oh, Mom, somebody said this horrible thing about you on Facebook today. Yes, but what you didn't see about the rest of my day is I got to interact with this resident, and
Yeah.
I got to attend the Historical Society marker unveiling, and I got to go to the senior center and have lunch with people there, things like that.
Sure.
And those aren't the public parts, but those are the parts that you just are so deeply satisfying.
Yeah.
And you feel like those really are what matters.
sure.
So
And-
you
and-
try and shake off the rest.
I was going to say, how do you tune out because we're living a social media society now. So I would say people have greater access to public servants than they ever have, especially on a local level.
Yeah.
People can say things and Paige comes in and says something back. You can respond back. I mean, how do you?
I usually try and count to 10 at least.
Smart. That's probably a good idea, right?
Well, and from the beginning of, I was actually, I don't know if I should tell people that. I was there when they formed Lehigh Link, which
Okay.
of course is the juggernaut of
Yeah.
social media here
Yeah.
in Lehigh. And I was reading the initial goals for it just yesterday because of the anniversary. It's been like 9 years.
Yeah.
And it was like to bring the community together, and unity was mentioned, things
Sure.
like that. And all too often the opposite happens,
Yeah.
which is super unfortunate.
Yeah.
But I get it because it's an easy, accessible way to air frustrations
Yeah.
and things like that. And it's like the nightly news.
Yeah.
100 wonderful things happen for every story, but that's what sells.
Yeah.
And that's what brings people.
Sure. And even you said, hey, I was ticked off. That's why I went in.
Yeah.
And that did start that process. So
The extra pieces of knowledge I gained after that about
Yeah.
how everything works, I would still be ticked off.
Sure.
And I'd be just like, but the end of that story, the moral of that story
Yeah.
is 10 years later, last summer, I posted a picture
Mm-hmm.
of my oldest boy playing with his brother on his own softball team in the Lehigh Men's Softball League.
gotcha. I
It
like
took a
it.
decade.
Sure.
It took a decade. But we brought it back. We finally were able to get the park space. We got the lights up and running. Managed to move the mink farm. All those dominoes fell
Sure.
finally in the right order. And that was a super proud moment for me because I thought, you know what? Promises kept.
Yeah.
It took a decade, but
Well, and somebody that's enjoying that now, probably, I think that's good for them to know, hey, that took 10 years to make happen.
yeah.
Most of things in life we're enjoying the fruits of probably other people's
Yeah.
labors, and even generations before us and different things like that. But so that's an example, right? Somebody else gets to enjoy that now, and they don't understand, hey, a lot of effort went into that.
Yeah.
And
In some cases, years.
yeah,
And it's not like it was me. I had nothing to do with it. It was like so many departments and staff and so many people that worked for it. And when they said, hey, we don't want to end this, we want to keep it continuing, they were telling the truth.
yeah,
They were just, excuse me, it just takes some time
sure.
and the effort. And it's like that with just about everything. And I think it's harder now because we're so much more of a transient society.
Sure.
Establishing those roots in a hometown is becoming rarer and rarer because
Sure.
you move where the jobs are, or you go to
Totally.
a different area, or
Yeah.
things like that. So it's hard to convince people, invest your time and your money and your hours of service and your family's effort into building a community that you're moving away from next year.
Yeah, yeah.
It's hard to do that. One of my hobbies that I love to do, I love to go back and read old articles in the Free Press from
Okay.
100 years ago.
Yeah.
I get teased about it a lot, actually.
Again, I like it. Yeah, that's good.
Like Wines Park.
Yeah.
There are articles about how they sold trees.
Mm-hmm.
Like your family could sponsor a tree for $1 or whatever.
Like Christmas trees or what kind? Oh,
No, like the trees that are growing there now.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Like sponsor highway kind of thing. Is that
Yes,
is that what
exactly.
you're saying? Okay.
Yeah, they didn't have money in the city coffers, so they let people contribute that way, and they planted these trees. And a lot of the descendants of people who bought those still live here, but a lot of the people who enjoy those trees have no idea
Yeah.
that it was a huge sacrifice for families 100 years ago, but they did not put them in for themselves. they did it for the descendants, for the people who come after. And it's funny because yesterday my youngest boy came home and he said, "Mom, are you cutting down the trees at Wines?" And I looked at him and I'm like, "Son, I've been here all day. I've never." And he said, "Yeah, they're those ones on the southeast side." Mm-hmm. I'm like, "Those have been through their lifespan." And I said, "A lot of people will drive by and say, 'Why is the city cutting that down?' Yeah. We're not doing it because we had nothing to do."
Sure, of course.
On a Tuesday morning. They've been through their lifespan. I said, "Son, go back by and drive and look, and you'll see trees at all different ages planted throughout the park, because our Parks Department has been planning for this for 20 years.
Sure.
And they've gradually been putting them in. And now this one is half dead, in danger of falling over. So yes, they're taking it out."
Yeah.
Not me.
Yes. Yeah. You represent to him the city, right? So, you know.
Right, and it's that way for a lot of people. I think if you sit back and take the logic and you think, what possible reason could they have for cutting down this tree? Well, it's not to tick you off or to make sure that you have to sit in the sun for the parade. Maybe dig a little deeper and think, maybe it's not nefarious.
Fair. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we probably often go to the negative. Right?
Yeah, we do.
And we live in a world, especially federal politics,
for sure.
We tend to, it's so far removed, so they're obviously evil, whatever side that you disagree with. Yes,
federal politics, too.
We all do it. But that's one of the purposes of this podcast, actually, but it's just to make things smaller, make things more community, because if you know the person that you hate, you're probably not going to hate them.
Oh, it's so true. It's so true. I love meeting with people for that very reason, because then it's not a faceless whatever.
Yes.
I'm not to them and they're not to me. And you can always find that common ground. The bridge building is so important in politics, and it becomes more and more rare. It's just so polarized right now.
Yeah.
And it's taking some of the enjoyment out of it.
Sure.
There's not the same sense of camaraderie.
Sure.
I don't know. We are doing some things to help, though, that hopefully will. We recently started, because I couldn't think of it. I call it to myself and on my calendar the North Utah County Task Force. Okay. But basically the city councils from surrounding cities, we meet together about once a quarter. We try and do it anytime there's a fifth Tuesday, because we all have our meetings on Tuesday. And we talk about things like transportation and common problems that our cities are facing, and try and make it to where, how can we work together to where our communities work in harmony instead of always being at odds in terms of my space versus your space. Because we're growing together, and that cooperation is going to be important in forging those bridges and making those relationships is going to be key.
And any fruits from that, or is this just beginning, or,
We've been doing it for a few months now.
Okay.
It was incredibly helpful during the issues with the school district.
Okay.
Because that was really uncharted waters for all of us.
Oh, sure.
And it was a really difficult issue. And it was nice to be able to bounce ideas off of each other and to know which direction everyone's going. And ultimately, we went in some different directions.
Yeah.
But knowing what page everybody was on was helpful. Knowing what issues everybody was talking about. Things maybe your city's thought about that my city hasn't.
Sure.
And how could we work together in terms of busing, things like that.
Yeah.
It was really helpful to forge those relationships. And right now, we have a really strong focus on transportation, making sure that we can be a unified voice in terms of lobbying for funding with the legislature and with Mountain Land Association of Governments, and finding the solutions that work for every city and not just help mine and screw yours.
Yeah. And good things are coming with that, I think, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we're making some headway. With everything else, government moves slowly.
Yeah.
You'd think it'd be like just as simple as go down to the Bank of Government and write a check to construction company A, and it's up
and
next
let's get started.
Yeah. People, it's hard to look around and say, well, you don't plan, because there's planning going on all the time.
Yeah.
It's just not always on the same page, and there's always funding issues, and if we want nice things, we have to pay for them. And there's no question that the growth has exceeded really beyond expectations.
Yeah.
And the positive side of that is, it's great and everybody wants to live here.
Sure.
The negative side of that is it comes with some issues.
Yeah.
For sure. We're playing catch up.
Well, yes, but it sounds like you're doing a good job with. I was talking to Mayor Johnson, and he was saying that UDOT has accepted your guys' projections. So I guess they had lower projections, and you guys are like saying, hey, these are the ones, and they now agree with you, which is good, right? Because that means things happen quicker than. Yeah. So they're not building way far behind.
Yeah.
I think they're always building behind.
Yeah.
But not as far behind.
And the funding follows the construction, which is something I didn't understand early on. I'm like, People are coming, just build it now.
Yeah.
With what? So you
Where's the
don't have
money?
the revenue to pay for the roads until you have the residents, and so it's a
Sure.
chicken and egg scenario.
Sure.
You hear the nightmare stories about a bridge to nowhere in Alaska or whatever.
Sure.
And so it's a tricky tightrope balancing act. And in cities with predictable, reasonable growth, I'm sure it's a lot more manageable.
Yeah.
When you have explosive growth like this, you're going to have issues. But we sit in the same traffic as everybody else.
Yeah.
We know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I always giggle a little even to myself because I'm like, all these cars are in my way and I'm not getting where I need to go. And then I think, and I'm the one for the guy behind me that's
Yeah.
in the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, when people say, my traffic's gotten so bad, well, if you're sitting in it, then you are it.
Yeah. It's the same thing when, oh man, there goes the farms, there goes the horses, the pastures, but you built your house too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and I get it. We all,
Yeah.
when do you stop it? But then do you stop having kids then? Because, it's your kids that are actually the ones moving there.
Yeah, and my
stuff.
kids would love to settle in their hometown. They're probably going to have to start out in other places and
Yeah.
then move home, which is totally reasonable.
Yeah.
But it is true that it's that balance between property rights and... Yeah, it's so funny we'd be talking about this because next door, we moved here to downtown.
Yeah.
Partly because it is the place in Lehigh that feels like old Lehigh.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things here that just haven't changed.
Sure.
And my husband, 2 weeks ago, the house next door to the one where we live went up for sale. And it's from 1899. Old brick.
Yes.
Yeah. House on the corner, been here for ages. We've got this historical society doing some digging
Yeah.
on whose it was and the history of it. But if you want to control what happens on a piece of property, the very best way is to own it yourself. It's hard to tell your neighbors you can't do that when it's their property. So you walk the line between preserving property rights and also making sure that others have the right to enjoy their property as
Sure.
well. And that's becoming a trickier balance as Lehigh grows because a lot of those infill spaces are growing together.
Sure.
So
Sure.
uses are coming up against each other.
Yeah.
We're discovering things in the zoning that adjusting,
Gotcha.
things
Gotcha.
like that. But that's what I told my husband. He's, what if we don't buy it? And what we learned was out-of-state investors wanted to buy it, and we were afraid it was just going to be bulldozed and duplexes put in. And we thought it's time to put our money where our mouth is in terms of preserving old Lehigh.
Yeah. If
and
we
do
want
what
it,
we can.
then we have to. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah.
It-
Which is why then weekends for the rest of my life will be repointing brick and refinishing floors.
Well, 1899. I'm guessing there's some needed work on that place.
There's some mystery jars in the crawl space.
Interesting.
We don't know what's in them.
Yeah.
They're old.
Yeah.
We're hoping it's not explosive.
Nitroglycerin in there or something like that. Yeah.
We're going to have to face that at some point, but yeah.
Yes. Good luck with that. Let me know the radius that I need to be away from.
Yeah, your building's close enough to that house,
Okay.
you'll
yeah,
know.
I'll hear. Okay. Good to know.
Yeah.
So, we're talking about Lehigh City a little bit. Anything cool coming our way as far, from a city perspective?
Oh, so many cool things.
Yeah, tell me what's cool. I don't know.
So many cool things. I keep telling the different city departments because they are humble and modest to a fault. They really are.
Yeah.
There's a city employee newsletter that goes out.
Yeah.
It talks about everything everybody's doing. And I'm like, don't we publish this?
Yes.
Because people need to know how hard you guys are working and how many things you're bringing in. Anyway.
Yeah.
We've got the new Civic Center.
Yep.
It's going to have the new library.
Yep. You can see it from here, actually. Yeah.
Super excited. One of
Yeah.
the things that brought my family here to Lehigh is it had things we were looking for. It had the Legacy Center,
Yeah.
and not a whole lot of towns of this size did.
Yeah.
It had a library,
Yeah.
and there were a lot of towns in North Utah County that didn't have
Yeah.
their own library. But that library had parts of the old junior high cafeteria. The roof was leaking.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
We had originally thought we'd be able to build the new Civic Center around it and incorporate and things like that, and it just turned out to be cost prohibitive and not worth pursuing. But that should be done looking at late next year,
Okay.
which is really exciting.
That is
I
exciting.
can see it out my living room window.
And so it'll have a library. It'll have the council offices. That's where
Mm-hmm.
and then just community space. How can I use the community space?
Isn't that? I can see why that would be something where people would be like, "What?"
Yeah.
I don't know if you've been in the Broadbent room in the new public service building, the
I have
police
not.
station.
No.
When that was built, it was a case of an old building
Sure.
being torn down. And boy, I was mad. I was like, oh, no, we can't.
Yeah.
And so they're like, Paige, come on a tour with us.
Yeah.
So I did. And by the end of the tour, I'm like, I can't believe nobody's died here yet.
Sure.
It had some issues.
Yeah.
And in terms of being able to fix it, I'm sure anything's possible with enough time and money, and who among us wouldn't bring back the tabernacle at any
Sure,
price? But
sure.
it was on the adobe stick mud. There just really wasn't a way to make it safe. And the Broadbent descendants actually said, what do you...
Yeah, let's do it.
Anyway, tore that down to make the new police station.
Yeah.
Perfect location. They needed it badly. Their old station didn't have appropriate evidence storage, things like that. It just wasn't effective. So they built this new police station, but one of the things they built in it was a community room. They called it the Broadbent Community Room.
Yeah.
And on the walls, they used brick. They saved brick from the old Broadbent building. And they have a little stained glass window in there with some things that honor Joseph Adams, the officer that passed away, for whom the building is named, and some mementos from that time from the Broadbent building.
Sure.
And what we have found is that community room is booked.
Really?
People use it like crazy. I mean, anybody can come in and rent it. We've had wedding receptions there and barbecues. My parents had their 50th wedding anniversary dinner in the Broadbent room.
Okay.
Chairs, tables, little kitchen, audio-visual equipment, things like that, heavily used. And we found that there's a need for those kind of community spaces where people can gather. And so some of those rooms are going to be like that, and they're being constructed in a way that can be closed off to be bigger or smaller. People could run classes there, they could do receptions, they could really community rooms. And it does two things. It gives spaces for people to gather if they need to, for pretty much any purpose, but also it gives us room to grow for the future. Because we are planning for this to be a building that will be iconic for hundreds of years to come. Yeah. This is not a throwaway modern architecture, steel and glass, cookie cutter kind of a building. Yeah. It is very different. And because of that, it can be polarizing. There are people who are like, what do you... We put a lot of thought into it, into how we wanted it to look, how we wanted the architecture to be classic, harken back to Lehigh's roots, but also be a building that's super functional and will last the community needs for many years to come. Yeah. The current City Hall, people are like, it's so much money to spend, and do we really need it? The current City Hall is largely unchanged from when I moved here 22 years ago. And if you think about the change in population, the staff is stacked like cordwood in the building. Yeah. And it's excessive staff. They get amazing things done. Yeah. Considering how few there are. Excuse me, but there's just no place to put them. Yeah. We have to
And we're
expand.
bigger before, so we need more people doing...
And we're still going to use the existing City Hall.
Okay.
It's planning services are going to be in there, a couple of other departments. But we need the space, but we want to be prudent with the expenditure and make it something that'll last for generations. The police station will be sufficient until we're at full build-out, which will probably come in the next 50 years.
So is that community room, just go on the website to book it? Obviously, it's not open yet and stuff. I'm assuming there's a cost to it and stuff like that?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what the Broadbent room is. What is it, like $50? It's very reasonable.
Yeah, very reasonable.
And I think you book it the same way you do with the pavilions at the parks, things like that. Sure. Yeah, it's just a great, beautiful space.
Well, that'll be good. Yeah, again, nice to have that space, like you said, to be able to house all the different things that are going on here. And it is, the renderings look beautiful. It looks like a really great building. So
right now it looks like a bunch of steel wrapped in plastic saran wrap.
Yes.
See the vision.
But I see it. Like I said, I see it. It's going up here all the time. Going back to cool things. Okay, so the public. Okay, so what other things are coming here?
Well, we just opened Family Park, which is amazing.
Yes. Okay. Yep.
That was just huge. And I don't know how much people know, but we had really 3 regional parks projects. Yeah. On the map as far as what we wanted to do. Yeah. One of them was the Forrest Mellor Sports Park down off of Pioneer and 17th. Okay. One was the Dry Creek Reservoir Project, which is a cooperative with county and feds. And it was not primarily recreational. It was to serve flood control and
had multiple.
And then Family Park. And what was happening is we were doing a smidge here and a smidge there, and it was like nothing was ever done and usable. It was this 20-year whatever. As a council, it was a really difficult decision, but we decided to focus on one and getting it done, and then move our focus to another one. Yeah. Park tax really helped. That was a huge amount of what helped us get Family Park to completion, but it's just an amazing facility. Anybody who's been up there are people who have concerns about when it has to be closed and how it has to be watched, and we've already had some vandalism and things like that, but there is such a positive vibe up there. And I have a special needs son myself. Yeah. And for a long time, Lehigh didn't have anything like that. When he was quite young, I visited my sister in Connecticut, and she took me to an all abilities park. I was blown away. I'm like, oh my gosh, he can use the swings. He can safely go. His walker can go up the ramps to the play structure, so he can do the slide on his own. Yeah. And I didn't even realize stuff like that was out there. Yeah. And I came home and I sat down with our parks director, Steve Marchbanks, and poor Steve. I'm like, Steve, And he started small with what he had.
Yeah.
We got handicap accessible swings at Wines.
Yeah.
Those are great fun. I see more typically abled people using them than special needs people because they're fun.
They're fun.
But it was a long-time dream of his, a long-time dream of mine, and a lot of people, to make a park that would be fun and great for everyone, but also accessible to people for whom there really wasn't anything else.
Sure.
So I think it's just a gem. It's a jewel. It's going to be a wonderful amenity for Lehigh residents for many years to come. It's a generational park.
Yeah.
Regional draw. So now on to the next thing.
Yeah. I am glad. I remember parks being, because I think you were my neighbor when that first park tax had come out or something like that, and ended up not passing and stuff like that. But I'm glad that we're doing parks and stuff. I like it when the money's spent here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I have no problem paying taxes when it directly benefits me or my family.
Absolutely.
Right? So kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm PTA from back in the day.
Sure.
That's where the roots are. And one of the things I discovered on PTA is that quite often we would, the process was we'd have a fundraiser and then we'd say, okay, what are we going to spend it on?
Sure.
And that always frustrated me because, for two reasons. The first one was, I think a lot of people are like you. They're much more willing to open their wallets if they know where it's going.
Yeah.
And if you can say, hey, we need this play structure on the playground, or we need 6 new tether balls or something like that, people are more likely to contribute to that.
Yeah.
And the other reason was I thought, if we don't have pressing needs, if we don't already know what we need it for, why are we doing it?
Yes.
Why go to the effort if you don't have a project in mind?
Yeah.
So that's what I really love about the park tax is there's a huge vetting process. People come in with their projects and there's some very specific criteria, arts, culture, parks, all of those things.
Yeah.
And there's accountability. We had reports just 2 weeks ago where they came in and said, hey, this is what we spent the money on. Mm-hmm. This is how many people it benefited. Pictures, slideshows, things like that, to where you can have that direct knowledge of exactly where it went and the huge accountability that comes with that.
Yeah.
The other thing I like about the park tax is it sunsets.
Okay.
If the citizens don't want to renew it after 10 years, they don't. And it's not a thing where you have to vote it down. It automatically expires unless it's
Renewed.
approved on the ballot and renewed.
Gotcha.
So I think it's a great, and it's how we got Family Park. It really is how we got that across the finish line, is having those funds. And there, it does a lot of things that maybe people don't see. Someone who was joking because they got new bathrooms over at the literacy center because they only had one stall and it was
Gotcha.
so they're showing pictures
Sure.
of the bathrooms and everybody's, oh, okay, good job. But
Yeah.
and maybe it's not exciting, but it's super exciting to them.
Yeah.
And it helps when you've got a whole bunch of kids in there and you don't have one stall.
Again, yeah, no, and that's probably part of the reason the school district thing, going back to that's probably the reason that passed a little bit too. We want the money here, right? You know what I mean? It's hard to be having our money go out to Saratoga Eagle Mountain or Orem and hey, Lehigh Junior, like it's where my kids go. It's like, okay, we need, let's upgrade that building a little bit. You know, I'd like some more money here, kind of thing.
And it made a lot of sense when the needs of the district were closer or similar or things like that. But there are markedly different situations in other areas of the district. And so I think it will be important to have local representation and spending.
Yeah.
I was in support of that. I was glad that it passed. Now we've got our work cut out.
Now we got
us.
work to do, right? Yeah.
There's work to do to make it work, and it's going to be a
But work is
challenge
good.
for a couple of years.
Yeah, we like work is, you change a lot of, you make things better with work, right?
Pioneering's our specialty,
right?
right?
That's exactly it. We shouldn't be afraid of work, so.
No.
But.
Well, you got work harding.
That's right. That's where I'm going. Yeah.
Very
that's
clever.
Right. That's right. That's what I tell my kids all the time. If you're lazy, you'll have a lot more problems than if you work hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, not that it fixes everything or anything like that, but it solves a lot of problems. Just put your head down and start working. Things will work out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. When I had a couple years of cancer experience, and one of the most frustrating things to me was just resting and staring at the ceiling.
Yeah.
Honestly, it sounds funny now, but it was huge that my husband set up a little bird feeder outside the window.
Yeah.
I would lay there and watch the birds all day, just waiting to feel better or whatever. Yeah. And my mother said to me one day, "You never were one for sitting around." I thought that's so true. I can't stand it. I've got to be doing something.
That's me too. No, I don't. I don't like to be idle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I like to be doing something.
Yeah.
And
good for your mental health.
It's good for your mental health. It is. No, it is. Well, and so I did want to hit on the personal part there. So you mentioned the cancer and stuff like that. And that's not an easy thing to go through. No. And that's something that puts mortality into perspective. And hey, is this it? Is this?
Gives you a lot of empathy.
Yes.
I did not understand. You think you do, but you don't until you go through it. But the biggest lesson I learned about cancer, let me backtrack a little. I had something called triple negative breast cancer, which is something that I had never heard of, but it is the most difficult to treat.
Sure.
And it's the most aggressive and the highest rates of recurrence.
Okay.
So it was a scary deal.
Sure.
And I learned a lot along that journey. I learned a lot about myself, what I could do. It was hard to let things go. I took a leave of absence from work. My husband and I sat down and decided we could concentrate really on just one thing, and we kept city council. I deferred my school enrollment for my master's program, and we concentrated on making sure I had the strength to do my job for the city, because that's where I got the most satisfaction. It kept me going.
Sure.
He says now he thinks it kept me alive.
Sure, your mental health, going back to that, right?
Yeah.
To have a purpose.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Having a feeling of purpose. So on the dark days, having city work, that was really motivating, and it kept me going day by day. But the biggest lesson I learned having cancer is that the hardest thing is not to have cancer yourself, but to love someone who has cancer. Because the torment that I watched my loved ones go through,
Sure.
and the helplessness I could tell that they felt, and that was the most difficult part of it. It wasn't the pain, it wasn't the losing your hair or looking different or the
Sure.
steroids or the chemo or any of that. It was watching the suffering of the people who loved me and the uncertainty that they felt and the stress that they felt because of it. So, huge supporter of anybody whose family is going through that, because that's the hardest part of cancer, is for your family to go through it. But managed to fight through it.
Yeah.
Offloaded a few spare parts. Chemo was successful. They say after 3 years, my risk of recurrence goes down a great deal.
Okay.
At 5 years, I'll have no greater risk than anybody walking around the street.
Great.
And I'm at 2.5 years now.
Okay.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Good job.
It's going great.
Yeah.
It grew back.
Yeah, it grew back. You look good. I wish there was an easier way to gain empathy, but experience tends to be one of the best teachers, right? Going through some of these things.
Some of my fellow council people, Paul Hancock and Chris Condi, they're both, they're both bald, and we had a lot of great jokes about which bald one do you mean. I realized that hats and wigs and scarves really not my thing.
Yeah.
It's chilly, but I'll just
Yeah, you
go
did
to
it. Yeah. But you did it, and you're recovering, and that's awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and again, you're no stranger to difficult stuff. Special needs son.
Yeah.
My brother's special needs actually also.
Oh,
so,
I didn't know that, Ryan.
Yeah. So my parents, I can relate from a different perspective as a brother growing up, and it was always, it's different. There's challenges that come with that.
Hard.
And I remember, he would, people would come over and he'd be like, "Hey Ryan, remember how you pick your nose or something?" It's like and sometimes he'd share things that weren't even true.
Right.
Yeah, and so then you're like,
why
okay,
are you saying this in Walmart?
Yes, exactly. But I think one of his special gifts is the ability to make you humble.
Yeah.
And my guess is same thing with your son. I mean, it definitely adds that dynamic again to your life that ultimately I think if you embrace makes you a better person. Is it hard? 100%.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. And so
it is. It takes a lot, and it changes your plans and your views.
Yes.
I remember I have 3 sisters, and one day we were all out at lunch or something, and they were talking about what a relief it was that they didn't have to carry a diaper bag anymore.
Oh, sure.
And I wanted to throw my fork or something. I'm always going to carry a diaper bag, right?
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
I'll be 65 years old and carry my kid's diaper bag.
Yeah.
It's just, I have a different reality than you do.
Yeah.
Retirement looks different for me. Daily living looks different. I mean, he's 24 years old, and I literally have a kid in daycare at 24 years old.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a different reality, but I get fantastic parking at Christmas time.
That's
and
good.
I go to the front of the lines at Disneyland.
Sure.
So,
there you go. I like that. Going back to Lehigh City a little bit, transportation, we got some things coming there. Do we know, Pioneer Crossing obviously there was some speculation on widening that. A lot of people didn't love that because you'd push into some houses and have to do that. A lot of houses.
And businesses, and not old ones, like people that built.
Yes, exactly.
Very recently.
Right? Yeah. And so then they're also talking about, hey, just doing above the lake, which obviously wouldn't disrupt as many people and stuff like that. But there's always disruption. But do we have any where that's going? I guess that's not done yet.
One of Mayor Johnson's really big focus, it really has been the center of his efforts, is solving transportation problems for North Utah County. And the plan right now for Pioneer Crossing is they'll move it, I believe last I heard, to 5 lanes. They're taking out the median.
Yeah.
They won't have, and they're taking out the bike lanes.
Okay.
Lots of people were like, I didn't even know there were bike lanes.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it's not like a bikeable kind of a
I know.
thoroughfare.
Not a lot of people are on there biking, but yes.
So taking out those, making it the 5 lanes, but one of them will be flex, so you can have 3 lanes going.
Like during rush hour.
Change the direction of the lanes. But the truth is, it's only one piece of a very big and complicated puzzle.
Yeah.
That would say the houses along Pioneer Crossing, but even if you made Pioneer Crossing 12 lanes, it's not going to solve the east-west transportation problems. We need more drains to the bathtub.
Sure.
It can't just be one, no matter how big that drain is.
Yeah.
There are a whole lot of different possibilities that are being looked at. They had a meeting on the 18th, just a couple days ago,
Oh, okay.
the Fresh Look Transit Study. The mayor went to that. I'm excited to hear how that came out. They have acknowledged that their projection numbers are a little bit off.
Sure, yeah.
We're trying for north up by Point of the Mountain, Clubhouse Drive extension, 2100 North is in design phase now. They
For the
should be
freeway
starting
and stuff
that.
like- yeah.
Main Street, obviously, we're huge constrictions and we need to take traffic off of that.
Yeah.
Expanding Pioneer Crossing, 1700, 1900 South, down along the lake shore, and then something just off the lake shore. And we really need all of them.
Yeah.
But, it's a tough sell.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of constituents, and it's time for our voices to be heard.
Yeah.
We have been pushed as far as we are willing to be pushed.
Good.
Yeah, and that's part of the usefulness of my North Utah County Task Force.
Perfect.
Is there's strength in numbers.
Yeah.
And when we have a unified voice saying, it's not just this area, it's not just this area, we are all demanding that you take action and
Yeah.
pay attention to us.
Yeah. Yeah, we have needs here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a much stronger way to advocate.
And the roads go through Lehigh that are going to Saratoga Springs Eagle Mountain, right?
Exactly,
I mean,
yeah.
so it's not our traffic all the
No.
time, right?
No. So it's everybody's responsibility to look into that
Yeah.
and make sure that we get that fixed. And we say there are lots of pieces to the complicated puzzle. Part of the reason is jobs are here, cheaper housing is there.
Yeah.
So you get in and out every day. Last number I heard was like 30,000 people
Yeah.
in and out of the city every day.
Yeah.
So as commerce grows out there and they have more jobs out there, then there'll be less back and forthing,
Sure.
things like that. But there's always going to be those waves at peak hours.
Yeah.
And that concerns me because it's a huge drain on everyone's day.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm an emergency preparedness nut, and I look at the backup just with daily traffic,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm frightened
Sure.
as to what would happen should
Some
the cities out west need to evacuate for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
There were fires sweeping through. There's only so many drains in their bathtub.
Sure.
And I want to be a part of that solution for them.
Yeah.
But I also want to make sure that solution does not come at the cost of Lehigh residents.
Okay.
So
Good.
that cooperation, collaboration is going to be important.
Good.
Forging those relationships.
Well, I go back to what you said earlier with, hey, we live here too, we drive here too.
Yeah.
So like, I like that some of us everybody wants the problem solved yesterday, right?
Right.
But the reality is, it's not going to be. But it's good to know that it sounds like good people are in charge of trying to solve some of these problems. And you're aware of these problems, you're trying to get the money for these problems, you're uniting. Again, I do think the power of councils, which is what you have with this task force and
Yeah.
stuff like that, or you're trying to get many voices. Because if you can be unified, if government can be unified again to do what, I mean, again, government has a place, right? We just don't like it when government oversteps. But as long as government's doing what they're supposed to be doing, hey, that's great.
Yeah.
We want government to fill the role that they're supposed to do, which obviously this is one of those big roles, right?
And there's a perception out there, and justly so, that things don't move fast enough.
Sure.
They call it red tape for a reason.
Yeah.
There's a lot of roadblocks to get past
Yeah.
to get things where they need to go. But we're moving that needle as quickly as we can.
Good.
But it's a tough road.
Yeah.
But the cities around us, I've been so impressed with their councils.
Good.
In terms of uniting and collaborating, I think it's a dream team situation because
Good.
we all get along very well. And it's funny because everybody takes their turn hosting
Yeah. Okay.
the meeting with all the different councils. And last time we were out, we were out in Cedar Fort.
Okay. Oh,
Cedar
okay. So
Valley.
yeah.
Yeah, even out there.
Okay.
And they did a beautiful job. They had
Mm-hmm.
it at their community room or whatever, and everybody drove out to meet. But it's so important that we take that road and see what things are like in other communities, and
Yeah.
that we step outside of ourselves, and it builds that empathy for what they're facing.
Sure.
and helps us align all of our goals in ways that can be successful for all the communities, not just ours.
Yeah, because to your point, your kids might live out there. And
In a van down by the river.
Exactly. Oh, hey, we'll give them a house. Or something.
Right now, their condo is my basement.
Okay, we're working on it. Let's get interest rates lower. Let's solve every problem that we can right now. But
hours in a day, Ryan.
But we got to put our heads down and work, right?
Yeah.
But I like that you're unifying with them, because again, whether we all stay in Lehigh or move to these other places, we lived in Lehigh and then we moved out to Eagle Mountain for a period of 3-4 years, and then we came back to Lehigh. And so that's sometimes what a lot of people do. We move around, and so we're trying to make all of this better. And again, who knows where my kids will end up? Hopefully around here, but so you want to make it all good, and that's what you're trying to do, right?
And it takes a lot of faith in the good intentions of others.
Sure.
I still, even after all these years, I have this almost childlike optimism for the future.
Sure.
And
Good.
confidence that the people who are in government are there for good reasons.
Sure.
And the higher you get up in levels of government, the harder it is to trust that that's
Sure.
why they're there.
Sure.
But I'll hear people say, the government did this and they just don't care about us. And I'll say, like, to my children, who do you think they is?
Yeah. Yes.
And I'll be like, the people in government, them.
The man.
I'm like,
You know.
It's me, son.
Yeah.
It's me, and it's Chris, and it's Paul, and it's Heather, and it's Michelle, and it's Mark.
Yeah.
These are people. Do you really think it's a them situation? These are neighbors, people who live here, people who love this community, people who go through a lot to serve this community. It's not a them or a they, it's us.
Yeah.
We are the government. It's truly we the people on the local level.
Yeah.
We're your neighbors.
Yeah. On that note, all of us, there's only so many positions in government and
Right.
stuff like that.
Thank heavens.
Thank heavens. Right. But if I want to serve, or if I want to do something, what advice do you have for, hey, I want to make the community better. What can I do, person that's asking this question? Because I don't want to serve. I don't have the time maybe to do that or whatever. But I do want to help. I do want to make things better. Any advice that you would give to that person that's looking to just make the community better?
The city actually keeps track of volunteer projects and has a list. They can reach out when they need help with stuff like that if you wanted to do it on an as-needed kind of a basis. Tons of committees you can serve on and help with that always need dedicated people. Even if you wanted to maybe do more in public service eventually, it's useful to have your thumb on the pulse of what's going on
Sure.
in the city. As city council, we are liaisons to different committees. Excuse me. And there are just so many. I'm the liaison for the Environmental Sustainability Committee.
Okay.
They do great things. Lots of proactive efforts in Lehigh in terms of conservation, waterwise landscaping, highlighting recycling programs, things like that. They do some really great work. They could always use more hands. I'm the liaison for the Parks, Trails, and Trees Committee. Again, really great stuff. You get to, on that committee,
Yeah.
sometimes you get to actually choose what kind of play structures if you
Yeah,
can look at the designs
yeah,
and things
yeah.
like that.
Have a little bit of it.
That's super helpful. There's a library board, there's the Historical Society, there's the Arts Council, just lots of places where volunteer hands, lots make for light work.
Sure.
And it's great to have people in the community help, and almost all of those places can put you right to work if that's something you want to do. Dive right in. Lehigh has this huge history of volunteerism.
Sure.
It's remarkable. Going back to my, bad habit of reading old newspaper articles. It's tremendous to see how this community was built on volunteerism.
Sure.
It really was.
Yeah.
Almost everything you can see around town that is older or whatever has a component of volunteer service to it. I'm hoping we can bring it back because it would be super fun. But even things like the library, most people don't know that the building right next door to you, the Hutchins Museum, as well as being the first building dedicated as a war memorial for World War II, was also a Carnegie Library.
Oh, no.
And when they opened the new old library in the old junior high cafeteria, they did a book brigade.
Okay.
And the city residents lined up and passed the books to move them from one location to the other.
Yeah.
And people remember that as a contribution that they made, and wasn't that fun, and wasn't it a great day moving all the library books to the new location and things like that. So even small things have this component of service from self.
Sure.
It's one of the things that I love most about Lehigh, because we take care of our own, we build for ourselves, and we care for things for the future.
Yeah.
And it's, if you want to serve, we can put you to work.
There's work to be done. I like that.
There's work to be done.
Whether it's for a day or for a couple months, I guess it sounds like.
Sometimes
So.
I'll go to bed at night and I'll be tired or whatever. Have I done any good? And you have to
Which
think
is
back
the
and
great
say, yeah,
attitude
okay.
for that song. That's exactly how that
If
song
you
should
sing
be
it in
sung.
a minor key.
Yeah. There you go. Okay. So I'm gonna ask you specifically on that question. You've been serving for, you said 8 years, right?
Close to 10 if you count all the things, but
Okay, all
I'm
right,
in my
so-
third term on council.
Okay. All right. So
Yeah.
okay, close to 10 years. So tell me, is there something in that 10 years that you're most happy with as far as, hey, here's the good I did in the world today?
Oh, wow.
On that.
That's hard to pick.
Is there something that
Oh,
you're like,
gosh.
I really like that I was a part of this?
Oh, there's so many things that have just been so fun. It would be so hard to pick. And obviously, the softball thing, that's
Yes, yeah.
huge.
Because that's what you set out to do initially. Yeah.
Love being on their parade committee. There are things that, oh man, I'm running through them in my mind. It's just- there's no way to talk about them without feeling like I'm taking credit. And for so few of them, I had almost nothing to do with it. It just happened.
And something you're a part of, and that's fine. I wouldn't say this is Paige's baby, per se.
We have, I'm obviously very proud of the police station. We've opened two new fire stations since I've been in office.
Okay.
That's huge. Those are big things that are obvious to everyone. The things that I'm most proud of are the things that maybe aren't obvious but might not have happened otherwise. 2 years ago, my nephew and his wife lost their baby. And he's from Highland. They looked around to try and find a place for him. And Lehigh has a baby land in their cemetery. It has been put in during my time in office. It's a really special place. It has a beautiful statue, and that's where they laid their son to rest. Not a whole lot of people know that place exists,
Yeah.
but it has become a place of refuge and comfort for a lot of families, and that's incredibly meaningful to me.
I love that. Love that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool. Lehigh's got a lot of cool places that I didn't know that existed. Yeah.
Yeah, that to be able to provide that for grieving families, it's when you know that you live in a community that cares even when nobody's watching.
I was going to say, to your point, the other things, the big things, that's the ones.
Those are the resume builders.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good way to say it. But this one's like more, hey, caring for the individual,
Yeah.
which is what that's what makes up a community, is individuals. And no, I like that. I love
It
that.
was one of those things where, being on the Parks, Trails, and Trees Committee, we were able to look at the statue, help it get put into place, and something that our community lacked, they now have.
Yeah.
And God willing, nobody will need it, but if you
Yeah.
do, Lehigh has a place for your little one.
Love that. Paige, as we wrap up here, have we covered?
Well, that's a very sad note.
I know. Yeah. Maybe is there anything we haven't covered? Is there anything that you wanted to? Any things that you just love about Lehigh, or anything that you're excited about, or I don't know,
It just is a great place. And I know it's hard sometimes, but I try and do it, and I try and encourage other people to do it. For every negative, there's a positive.
Sure.
Every single one. There's traffic on the roads on the way to a paying job that will help someone provide for their family.
Sure.
There's more people in your community that you can serve and you've been friends with. I can't think of a single person who's moved to Lehigh in the last few years. As crowded as we've gotten,
Yeah.
I've made so many friends and met so many great people. And that perspective from beyond the community
Yeah.
has brought a richness and a depth to the tapestry of Lehigh. So for every negative that we might be going through, just look for that positive silver lining, because it is always there. We have a Costco, Ryan. For all the challenges that growth brings, it brings tremendous blessings too. We can get through the challenges, and I'm grateful for the positives. And I just would encourage everybody to have that kind of an outlook, because otherwise it can really get you down. And that's the way I look at everything, social media to emails I get and things like that.
Yeah.
For every one person who is, disgruntled or upset, there's a whole lot of people who have good reasons to
Sure.
be grateful and love it here. And that's why we have the growth, because we're a great place to live.
Yeah.
We just are.
And I would rather deal with the problems that come with being good, growing, all those things, as opposed to the problems that come, because there's problems either way.
Yeah.
If you're stagnant or if you're decreasing, there's problems either way.
In Detroit.
That's right, exactly. That's where I was going. But there's, and which they've turned it around too, actually, because it's gone down. There's been a lot more investment and the things got anyhow.
Yeah.
But to that point, I guess I'd rather deal with the problems that come with growth and stuff, because there's always going to be problems. But put your shoulder to the wheel. I guess get to work.
You can always find that positive to it, and if you can't find it, you can make it.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I like that. Anything else? Anything else?
No,
okay.
just great community. I love that you're doing this podcast.
Yeah.
It's always fun to chat about. You can tell I get pretty lit up about it.
But that's good, and it's why we like having you on the council, because again, we want good people there that are doing good things and trying to make the city better.
Yeah.
And
we don't always agree, as staff but I always think how frustrating it must be for staff to go to school for 8 years and put all their learning into a decision, and then have city council go, no.
Sure,
things like that.
Sure.
I have absolute 100% confidence that everybody is there for great reasons.
Yeah, good.
And that's half the battle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, they're trying to explain complicated things because things are more complex. We want everything simple, but there's complexity to life. And well, okay.
Yeah. No.
Good.
Simple as a day gone by.
Yes. Well, thanks, Paige. Thanks for coming on the podcast. Thanks for chatting with me for a little bit. And
what a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Hopefully this benefits people, gets information out there, and ultimately just brings the community together, which is really the point of this, is let's make things smaller. Let's bring things closer. Bring the personal. Yeah, that's the goal of this.
Well, at all.
You didn't? No.
I didn't do the edit, but if you get through it and it's too personal, feel free.
Hey, you didn't do that, so I'm keeping it all. No editing here. So, no, thanks, Paige. Appreciate you coming on.
No, sure. Appreciate you, and appreciate you bringing business to downtown.
Yes. Yeah.
We need people here.
I love my location.
It is fantastic.
Yeah.
It is.
2 minutes from my house can't get better than that.
I'm almost excited to be old because I'll be able to walk to the library and the senior center and
the
Legacy Center and all those places, and come walk to Pioneer Market. You stop to think about the businesses that are downtown, and you can get everything from a pedicure to your taxes done.
Yeah. No, again, you can do that's. When my wife's parents come from back east, they're always like, "Oh man, everything's so close here," because they're driving in Georgia and it's through the tree. It's a lot further to go, and everything's here. No, we have everything here.
Well, and you have the best seats in the house for the parade, for sure.
Yes, we do. Yeah, you can't get any closer here. It's a good spot. Okay.
Love to the family.
Yeah. Thank you. Same to you.
Yeah. Miss the old neighborhood, but we love being downtown too.
Good.
Alrighty.
Good. Thanks, Paige.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Roots and Branches of Lehigh. I hope today's story helped you feel a little more connected to the people who make up our community. Remember, every person here has a unique story, and together, we're what makes Lehigh feel like home. If you know someone who would be a great fit for this podcast, please fill out the form in the show notes so we can reach out and schedule an interview. We'd love to hear from you. A big thank you to our sponsors, the Work Harding Home Mortgage Team and Play Harding Nightly Vacation Rentals, for supporting this show and helping us bring our community closer together. Until next time, keep growing those roots and reaching out to your branches. Take care.